More people are sharing their stories with us who were former Trump voters who no longer will vote for Trump and no longer, frankly, vote Republican because the Republican Party's gone full MAGA and has left them. Thanks for sharing your stories with us. And if you have a similar story, please share with us. I love to read these stories out loud in the video series that we do here, like this one. I have several Republican friends who did not vote in 2020 because they weren't happy with either option and weren't going to vote again until Vice President Kamala Harris herself became an option. Here's another one. Thank you, Ben. My wife voted for Trump in 2016 because she thought he was a great businessman, but unfortunately didn't do her due diligence. She regretted it the very next day. Here's another one. I was a lifelong Republican, not MAGA, but I voted for Trump the first time because I was uninformed and just voted blindly. Worst day ever. To know Trump is to loathe Trump. I was raised a Catholic military brat by a mother waiting for her husband to return from war with my two sisters. I learned how to kneel and to put the toilet seat down before I was out of diapers, and I learned it's yes, sir, and no, sir, not yeah, right from the start. I proudly voted for Joe Biden, and I will proudly vote for Kamala Harris because they represent the American values I grew up with. Crystal writes, my husband is a lifelong Republican, me a Democrat, and he is voting for Kamala because he's afraid of dump. I was very surprised when he announced that. Sanity over insanity. By the way, Republican voters against Trump just announced that they have spent over $3.5 million on these 30-second videos that will be appearing in swing states of former Trump voters sharing their stories. And they also have billboards like this in many of the swing states. Just take a look at them. These are all former Trump voters who are patriots now, and they are voting for Vice President Kamala Harris, and they share their stories on the billboard. What I love that the Republicans Against Trump group does too is every day they show an act that Donald Trump did. For example, here it says 95 days left. And it's just a reminder, in 2017, after Hurricane Maria, which claimed nearly 3,000 lives, Donald Trump visited a relief center in Puerto Rico. Instead of offering meaningful help, Trump threw rolls of paper towels at survivors. 95 days left. Here, watch this. Here's a story that they share at Republican Voters Against Trump. Here's the story of Pete, a two-time Trump voter from Maine. Take a watch.
I don't think that Trump is the best person for the job in 2024. I think that we're in a world of hurt, and we need to put somebody in there that will maintain the consistency that we've seen the last 4 years. I'm Peter. I'm a two-time prior Trump voter, and I do not plan on voting for Trump on this election. I liked Trump's policies. I liked Trump's ideas. And then as time went on, Trump lied. Trump didn't follow through on what he said. And it was very difficult for me to try to determine what was the truth and what was a lie. And based on that knowledge now, I'm not comfortable voting for Trump again. In 2024, I plan to vote for a Democrat for president, and I've never done that before. I've always solidly stuck with the Republican line, thinking that I'm going to go red. I might get a bad one in there along the Senate or congressional lines or representatives. Somewhere I might get a bad one, but in the end, I think that the Republicans would have been fine, but I've changed my realm of thinking now, and I won't do that anymore. I'm going to really search out my candidates, read about them, and try to make sure that they're going to be the best candidate for the job. And I don't think that Trump is the best person for the job in 2024. I think that we're in a world of hurt, and we need to put somebody in there that will maintain the consistency that we've seen the last 4 years.
Going back to some of the stories that you all have shared with us, Bob writes, I have been a Republican since September 1975. I'm going to vote for Kamala because she is the choice for keeping our democracy. I'm a never Trumper from the day he announced his bid in 2015. Eddie writes, I'm a Republican. I voted for Biden. Now I'm voting for Kamala Harris. We don't need a dictatorship or MAGA. All we need is our freedom constitution as we the people. Nate writes, my brother, who has voted Republican for 60 years, is voting for Kamala, says he finally had enough of Trump's BS. Karen writes, I'm a registered Republican, soon to change, and have been my entire voting life. In the last election, I voted for Biden with no regret. I will cast for Harris in November. Trump has destroyed every principle I believe in, and I have no faith he will ever change. I honestly don't know why, as a convicted felon, an instigator of the insurrection, that Donald Trump is allowed to even run again. His behavior alone disgusts me. And I've heard this over and over again in a lot of the posts that you sent me, how he disgusts you, how he's disgusting, how just his essence, his very being is grotesque, is what you've shared. I agree. Here's the another one that I got. Former Republican here, I'm so thoroughly disgusted by the now unrecognizable party I once supported that I'm not sure I will ever be able to vote Republican for the remainder of my life. I don't like the Democratic financial policies, but I am an American before I am a Republican. I can't support the Republican desire to dismantle our country and try to retain power. Next comment. My neighbor has been a Republican for 52 years, never voted Democratic in his entire life. He is voting Democratic this election to save our country and also for his granddaughters. That's a patriot when you love your country and you put your country over your party first. Then I'm a Catholic Christian and I've voted Republican since the 1990s. My wife and I will not be voting for Donald Trump. January 6th says it all, and his conduct since confirms our worst fears. He is a huge danger. I'm voting for Harris. Down ballot, I will vote for the GOP if they are not MAGA. Let this be a blowout in favor of Harris. And again, you can say, well, Ben, this appears to be anecdotal. I mean, these are just people sharing their stories. But by now, you know, I've received like hundreds of thousands of stories from Americans like this. So yes, while anecdotal, I can evaluate the overall trends. And you take those trends, and I think you also need to compare them to empirical data that exists as well. Don't forget this empirical data. And this is what I was always talking about when the corporate media was trying to push out Biden. The one thing I was saying is we have an empirical data set that the polls seem to underrepresent or show less support for Democrats and more support for Donald Trump than what actually happens on voting day. And we've seen this with authoritarianism abroad in Europe as well, in the French elections, in the UK elections, but specifically here in the United States in the primary. So a few months ago, Donald Trump would underperform in the polls, and significantly he'd underperform the polls. Like in Michigan, for example, Donald Trump underperformed the 538 average. Guess by how much? 15 points. 15. You know, people talk about the margin of error. Donald Trump underperformed the 538 polling average in Michigan by 15 points. And what we saw in each of those primary states just a few months back when the primaries were taking place was that there was about a 20% protest vote against Donald Trump in all of the various states where even though Nikki Haley was out of the race, people would vote against Trump or vote for Nikki Haley. On the other hand, Biden overperformed in the polling. Now, I think that is good news here because now Vice President Kamala Harris is leading in the polls as well, mostly all of them right now. The trend is in favor of Vice President Kamala Harris. Some are even outside the margin of error in her favor, as well as in the swing states. So where you already have Trump underperforming in the polls in actual voting and pro-democracy overperforming, that's notable. And I'll just show you this. Listening to your comments, I mean, how can you watch Trump and not be disgusted, like people say in those comments? Like, here, Donald Trump tries to justify why he's refusing to debate Vice President Kamala Harris, and he claims he's leading in the polls, which he's not. Here, play this clip.
They say, oh, Trump's, not doing the debate. That's the same thing they'll say now. I mean, right now I say, why should I do a debate? I'm leading in the polls. And everybody knows her. Everybody knows me. She wants.
And here Donald Trump is trying to talk about crypto, but then says you can wipe out our national debt, which, by the way, he added more to than anyone before him. He had like $8 trillion of debt. Trump says you can wipe it out. All you need is a crypto check. A crypto check? What? Here, play this clip.
There are people in crypto that are very, very smart people who do love our country, and they think it's good. Who knows? Maybe we'll pay off our $35 trillion, hand them a little crypto check, right? We'll hand them a little Bitcoin and wipe out our $35 trillion.
So look, share your stories with me below in the comments. I'd love to read them on another edition of a video like this. So if you're a former Trump voter or a former Republican who maybe you're still a Republican, but you just don't support this MAGA, or if you know people in your lives who have this story, please share it with me. I'd love to read those comments in the next video, and share this video with others in your life. Let people know that it's okay to leave MAGA and that there is a pro-democracy community of people who love our American flag, who love our Constitution, and who realize that we, the people, deserve politicians who talk about policies and who talk about how they're going to improve our lives, not spread hate and lies like Donald Trump and MAGA. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 3 million subscribers together, shall we?
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.